So as touching upon the the transition from clinical practitioner into industry, what made you want to move into medical affairs as opposed to something like clinical trials or a clinical trials physician?
Yeah, look, it was certainly not by design. During my early surgical training, I had a mentor, the chairman of surgery. He was a plastic surgeon.
Yeah, good mentor to have.
Yeah, and when you're a junior physician, you tend to follow the very sage advice of your mentor. And he was doing an MBA, Masters of Business Administration, and his counsel was that I consider doing something similar, which I did, and I ended up finding myself, completely outside of medicine, not through any lack of satisfaction with medicine, but just serendipity took me outside of medicine. And I found myself working for a management consulting firm, for banks in Thailand and mobile telcos in Indonesia in the early 2000s. Okay. And really, it was logic to me that I'd find myself a role in a medtech or a biotech company, combining the clinical skills that I'd learnt and the commercial skills that I'd recently picked up.
Yeah, okay, and I know a big part of medical affairs is sort of interacting with KOLs and much like healthcare professionals and doctors and specialists. So how would you say your medical degree and maybe even your MBA, how do you think that enables you to positively interact with these healthcare professionals or HCPs or KOLs, however you want to call them? There's so many names at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I think as a physician, you go to med school when you're 17 or 18 in your first year of your medical degree. It really is your formative years. I think medicine, does inculcate itself into your own DNA. So I think it's very important to always remember the needs of the patient. Even when we become a clinician or a physician in industry, we never forget that first and foremost we are there to protect the interests of the patient.
All right, excellent stuff. So again, I'm touching upon the time that you spent in medical devices, both at Certex and Cochlear. Where do you see the medical device arena going for the next sort of 10 years? Where do you see the most growth or progression, would you say? Difficult question, I know.
It's a very good question, Joe. I think if you look at what has happened in the last decade in the medical device sector, it has unfortunately been afflicted by a couple of quite significant disasters. And I think what we see now is that the best medical device companies are taking the best of what the pharmaceutical multinational companies have learnt over the last 20 and 30 years, and that is that well-obtained clinical evidence from well thought through, well-designed, well-run clinical trials are absolutely critical to make sure that the balance between effectiveness and safety is optimised for medical devices just like it is for drugs. And I think there's some major learnings that medical device companies can take from multinational pharmaceutical companies.
What advice would you give to looking to make that transition from clinical practice into industry, whether that's devices or pharmaceuticals?
The first thing I would recommend would be to seek out one of their former colleagues who've made the transition.
What would you say are the three top attributes to be successful in medical affairs?
Always put the interests of the patient first.